Hi again, lovely people, and welcome to my final week of my LGBTQ plus book recommendations.
Sophie Vlogs.
At the start of this month, I mentioned that I was going to do more of a compilation of book recommendations, and that I actually decided to do individual ones. Now that it's the end of the month, I realise there's only 4 weeks in February, so that would only be 4 books, and I have way more recommendations than that, so I'm going to end on a whole bunch of recs, really. Some of these are books that I have mentioned in previous videos, but I thought it would just be nice to compile them into this one handy little video reference thing. Okay, so I'm going to start with some physical book recommendations, and then I'm going to move on to some recommendations from my Kindle. First up is Two Boys Kissing by David Leviathan. I hope that's right. I've mentioned this book before because when I read it I just fell in love. I have read some more of his books now, but this is still my absolute favourite. I just think it's beautifully written. It's all centred around these two guys who are ex-boyfriends, but they're planning to break the Guinness World Record for the longest kiss. That's sort of the unifying point that brings it all together, but it explores a couple of other people's storylines, and it's narrated by the ghosts of people who died during the AIDS epidemic, so it really encapsulates quite a broad spectrum of gay experiences. You have people at various different points in their journey, if you will, and it's just really beautifully written. I can never get over how gorgeously he writes, and I absolutely wept when it ended because I just felt it was wonderful. So that's my first recommendation. My second recommendation is something completely different, and that is Crumb by Philip Reeve. I will say initially that this is the first book in a prequel series. The original series is The Mortal Engines, which I would definitely recommend you read first because it's absolutely fantastic. The central theme is the idea of traction cities, which is in a slightly post-apocalyptic world. There are cities which move and bigger cities devour littler cities, and they use their resources to keep them going and that sort of thing. And this series, whilst it's a prequel insofar as it explains how the traction cities came to be, it's got its completely original plotline, and the plotline isn't related to the original series. So you could read it independently, but I think you get a lot more out of it if you read it after having read The Mortal Engines. The reason this is on my list is because the main character, Crumb, is bisexual. I use the word bisexual rather than pansexual to describe her because, whilst it's not stated in the book, the author himself has used that word to refer to her. This is not a massive part of her plot. The whole plot is about essentially trying to stop awful things from happening in this amazing, amazing world. She just happens to at one point be interested in a man and at another point be interested in a woman. I just really love that there's this amazing, interesting female bisexual scientist character in this amazing, interesting book series, and it's just a really cool series that you should totally read, really. My next recommendation is A Single Man by Isherwood. I feel like a lot of the things that I'm recommending are quite young adult based, and a lot of the time they're based around young people dealing with their sexualities, so this is a really good book to read insofar as it shows you an older perspective on that. It focuses on the main character dealing with the death of his long-term partner, and it's quite sad and touching, and it's not altogether the cheeriest of reads sometimes, but I did really enjoy it and I thought it was really great, and it was great to get that older perspective. In a completely different vein, there is a book that I've already done a longer review on, which I will link here, and that is I Love This Part by Tilly Walden, which is just a really cute little comic-y love story between these two girls. Very sweet and adorable, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next up, I'm going to move on to some Kindle reads. First up on my Kindle reads is Far From You by Tess Sharp. I've mentioned this book before in one of my favourites videos, and that is because it was an utterly fantastic read. It's a murder mystery where the main character is bisexual and she's investigating the death of her ex-girlfriend. It's a really gripping book. I found the mystery itself very intriguing and engaging, and I did have to stay up till the early hours so I could finish it because I really needed to know what happened. I did manage to call a couple of the elements, but the actual overall mystery itself, I had no idea what was going to happen, and the reveal was just brilliant, and it was just a really fantastic book. Another Kindle read is The Miseducation of Cameron Post. This is about a girl who's growing up in, I think, the 80s. She realises she likes girls, her parents find out, they send her to like a conversion camp type thing. If that's something that is not something that you want to deal with in fiction, then maybe avoid the book, but otherwise it is brilliantly written. It's written with so much detail that rather than feeling like you're being overwhelmed with information, it just really helps immerse you in the moment, and you can really feel exactly what's happening, and it was just brilliant. There's mixed feelings on the ending. I personally really liked the ending, and I will absolutely be reading anything that Emily Danvers publishes in the future, because based on that alone, it was fantastic. My final recommendation is Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. I read this really recently and I absolutely loved it. It felt to me like what it would be like if Margaret Atwood wrote teen YA books. The basic premise is, in a sort of alternate present / slight future, there's a plane load of beauty queens on their way to a beauty pageant, and they crash land on a desert island, which just happens to be where this thing called the Corporation has a secret military base. What ensues is the girls pooling together their resources to survive on this island, because as it turns out they're all immensely talented because they're beauty queens and they have a lot of good skills. It was thoroughly enjoyable, it was so much fun, I had a massive grin on my face the whole time I was reading it. It does also feature same-sex relationships, it has a transgender character, it has a whole load of really great features that make it a really inclusive book that is also an incredibly good read and thoroughly enjoyable. It's the first Libba Bray book I've ever read, but I am absolutely going to check more of her work out after this because I thought it was excellent. There are more books I could talk about, but I think I'm going to leave it here for now before this video gets too long. I will say that I know the majority of these recommendations focus on the L and the G in LGBTQ+. I have set myself a personal mission to find and read more books that focus on other sexualities like pansexual, asexual, as well as exploring books that are more to do with intersex people or transgender people. And if anyone has any recommendations for me based off of that, then I would really, really appreciate them, because I really do want to work on reading more books that focus on these things that are not just exclusively focusing on the L and the G, if that makes sense. I have like a very limited amount of filming time, so I feel like I might have rushed through this a little bit, but that's because if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen. So if I haven't been clear about anything to do with these books and you'd like to ask me questions, let me know in the comments below. Or if it's been okay, then that's good. I hope that maybe there's a couple of recommendations of things here that you maybe haven't read before that you maybe might read now. That would be great. I hope you've had a really marvellous February and have maybe taken the time to read a little bit more LGBTQ+ books. That would be cool. If not, there's the rest of the year. Don't just have to confine it to February. Anyway, I will see you next week in March for something completely different. Who knows what. Have a fantastic day. Bye!